Hey everyone, it's Maria. Before this episode starts, I just want to give everyone a heads up. Brittany and I, alongside this week's guest, Adam, recorded longer than anticipated, which is a good thing because you guys will have 2 episodes of thought-provoking content. So you'll notice at the end it kind of tapers off, but don't worry because part 2 will be up next week. So, on that note, enjoy this week's episode.
All right, well, happy rainy gross Sunday morning, everybody. Maria's not happy with me right now.
No.
Welcome back to the Be More podcast. I'm Brittany.
I'm Maria, and today we have a guest, Adam. Nice to meet you first of all.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I guess, Adam, you can introduce yourself just briefly, what you do, and also how you know Brittany. I think we'll start there. We'll start easy.
I'm just a guy. No, I'm a private dog trainer. I've been doing private lessons for about the last year or so, but I've been into training for the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I mean, I went to school for psychology, and then like the first thing my senior year, I did an internship, and I was like, this is heavy. I kind of knew that going in, but I didn't really know to what degree. So, I was just kind of floating around and serving tables. I started working at Carrabba's where I met Britt, and I didn't do much for a while until I was like starting to approach 30. I was like, all right, let me get something going. And thankfully, I got my certification. I started off working at Petco, which sucked. But
corporate life.
Yeah, but thankfully now I'm with a really cool company, Michael's Pack, and they treat me pretty well. And it's kind of like running my own business, but I'm with the team. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like psychology, and it's helping people, it's helping families, and like, I don't know if you guys have pets, but the people when they just get their puppies, especially they'll do it when they've just moved. It can be stress on stress on stress on stress. So it's nice to be able to get in there and be a calming presence and give them some kind of direction and some kind of help.
That was a whirlwind. I didn't know.
We're blindsiding Maria right now because I've been doing so much. Like Adam, I originally talked to you like probably a year ago. Like, hey, come on the podcast. And it just like, and I've been terrible at communicating with Maria, who's coming on the show, because I never really know what's going on with all the madness in my life. So I literally didn't say anything to Maria about anything that you do or anything at all. So this is gonna be
here's the
moment for her.
Well, no. Here's the thing. Brittany was like, "Oh, my friend Adam's coming on. Here's his like Instagram handle." And
I did do that. I did something.
Yeah. That was it. You're like, Adam's coming on. Here's his Instagram. I was like, okay. So I did scroll through. I was like, oh, okay. I knew the dog part, which is very cool. We'll talk about, we'll dive into that. But the whole psychology thing, I had no idea about. So that's pretty cool, though.
Oh, I've got stories for you. And I mean, just in terms of doing this, Brittany, I used to have my own podcast. Mm-hmm. Brittany was a guest on my podcast.
Oh, cool.
This was a long time ago. Like, this is years on years.
And yeah, I mean, that was I'm jealous of you guys because I really am. I'm working to reboot what was the All Really podcast, AWEREALLY.
We'll put everything in the description.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I mean, I haven't been doing it for the last couple of years, but because my co-host kind of bailed on me. And it originally started out as just me and him talking about like philosophy, and it was when I first got into like atheism. We can go down that whole road. And a couple episodes in, we realized like, oh, we're not that smart. We don't have that much to tell you. And so we kind of revamped it, and over the next couple of years, we did pretty well, bringing people on. And it was just the underlying thing with just, everybody has wisdom that they've gained throughout their life, and people don't talk anymore. So if we just get people to sit down, crack open a beer, smoke a little something, then we open up, and there's always wisdom to be picked out of that. And it worked for a while, but the editing got to me, and I was pretty much doing everything on my own, and then life got in the way.
Life happens for sure.
Yeah. You're right at home here.
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems like what our podcast is. I mean, like me and Brittany, we don't advertise that we know a lot. We were just like, this is off of just our opinions and just like, nothing factual.
I made that mistake.
Yeah. So, and then again, like kind of like what you did, like we just bring on guests every so often just to have them talk about their passions and whatnot. It's just the space for people to talk. But to say the least, like the podcast editing and everything does take some time. So
I give Maria constant credit and apologies.
No, it's okay. It's really easy. I guess fortunately, unfortunately, it's really easy now because we are on via Zoom that like there's not much editing really on my part. It's just like cuts here and there, but again, that's just
I mean, when I started, I was cutting out uhs and ums and spaces and everything. I mean, when we got a little bit further down the road and I got a little bit better at just talking and not saying, every time I was about to say something, I'd be, so there was a lot less, but still just going through it and re-listening to it. And then I was, always the one booking guests and kind of leading the conversation and doing social media and all, and which was fine. But that wasn't the original plan. So then we we had to have a conversation like, all right, are you gonna are we co-host or like am I the host and you're just the guy who like comes in and then like I was just doing everything and then I just got, like I said, life got in the way, got too much. Now I've been focusing a little bit more on I for a long time I've wanted to write a book.
Cool.
And that's actually what got me down the road of podcasting, because I knew that I was good at talking to people, and I knew that there was something that I have to put down. I just didn't know what it was. So I was just trying to explore stuff and figure it out. And I mean, it's a good thing I didn't go into it from the rip and be like, hey, I know everything about religion, and here you go, because that would have been a very embarrassing book.
I was gonna say, what was your book about? But I guess it's about religion and atheism.
So I haven't written the book yet. I'm in the process of writing, and it's leaning more towards just about gathering information in general, and with I guess a focus on culture and how culture affects everything, and most recently like politics has consumed everything, and one of the I don't know what you call them, just YouTube news pundit, whatever guys, Tim Pool, that I'm a big fan of, is he'll say all the time, culture is downstream of politics, which I think he got from someone else, but so he's making an effort to not just sit there, read the news, complain about this side or that side or whatever, but create culture and have something that embodies something besides those values, and have the politics just being the underlying values that we hold.
See, you're so right at home here. Because it's funny, because Adam had to give Maria like an insight about this. Adam was like messaging me and was like, hey, are there things that you don't talk about? Like I usually talk about politics and religion. And I was like, well, we usually talk about everything you're told not to talk about in public, so I'm sure you'll be fine.
Literally, the three things that we always somehow go back to are capitalism, religion, and politics. Like, so you're right at home.
Those are all things we talk about. But it's there was something that you brought up that I wanted to speak to more, but
there's a lot of different tangents I can probably go.
Yeah, but
please.
It's awesome too. So we were, I mean, God, how long ago was that? You're talking about like at least 5 or 6 years, longer than that possibly. When we had first met, Adam, and like it's so interesting because working in a restaurant is not a relaxed situation to be in, because people are constantly so high strung and like losing their minds.
No.
So it was always very fun. Like whenever two of us would have like a minute where we usually ended up in the back. It was usually when we were like counting out for the night, right? We'd like start talking about stuff and we'd kind of be like, oh wait, like we're kind of on the same page with things. So when we were able to like branch out after that time, and like I was able to come on the podcast and like just talk more like philosophical things with you and talk about societal, like bigger picture things, I was like, oh, this, like, we're on the same page. So it's awesome that, all this time later that you can like circle back and we can have you here. And I totally get what you were saying about working with, this wouldn't be as successful, and when I say successful, I mean like functioning at all, if Maria and I weren't like super doing it together. And I hope that like you would agree with this, Maria.
Yeah,
like
of course.
it's hard to
we have our different roles, but it's also equal.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you, not just in general, like just podcasting, but just in general, like as just a partnership, business relation, whatever. I think that's just the key, honestly.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, like, a partnership, it doesn't necessarily have to be everybody is exactly equal. It's just having the roles that make, that complement each other.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing too, is like this is like weird getting into the philosophy of like our relationship, Maria, but like we've always been that way. It's always just kind of like worked.
Yeah, which is,
that's how it has to be. That's how that's one of the things that I've just learned over the years of, whether it be podcasting or just life in general, is I guess I've always had a tendency to want to make people like me and want to be, I'm a little bit shy, even though it may not seem like it now.
Oh, but don't worry. All three, I feel like all three of us now that you said that. Yeah, same.
Yeah. And so I always had a tendency to like want to make people like me and like put my best foot forward so that people could see that. And as I've got older, I just kind of realized, like, wait, maybe other people should be the ones to show me why I care what they think. Like, I'm the one who's sitting here putting time into thinking about these things, caring about these things, and everybody and their mother has an opinion, but why should I care about what that is? And it's helped me a lot in terms of, I may not always have the most popular opinions, but I'm always willing to hear people out. I'm always willing to discuss it. I'm always willing to back up whatever I have to say. And I'm always willing to say when I'm wrong. But people are so strong-headed these days. It's just that even if you agree with people, sometimes just having a conversation and saying something that triggers them in the wrong way will just derail it to the point where, and I mean, I'm thinking of my dad, who is, our relationship has got a lot better over the last few years as I've learned how to talk to him better. He's strong-headed like me, but he's not the best conversationalist. So I've kind of had to learn how to do that, and then realizing that while he's very wise and he's got a lot of great opinions, that just writing I would otherwise write him off just by the way that he approaches some things, or if he hears something that he doesn't like, it's on and it's like, okay, I understand that you have that reaction, but hold on, just see what you think about this. And I've learned to be able to do that with him and people in general, and it seemed to be doing a little bit better.
It's hard. It's really hard. And this is all stuff that Maria and I talk about all the time. Making space for other people, especially when you start to become a person who's self-aware, when you're doing that work, but then other people around you are not doing that work, and then you have to be forgiving of them and make space for them because they're not doing the work, is one of the most annoying things.
It's so annoying, and it's like such a balance, I feel like, because it's like, all right, you don't want to put yourself second, but also like you have to understand their perspective, so it's like an internal struggle. So yes,
and that like comes up with what you were saying, Adam, right? Like oh god, my therapist now, like I hear her voice in my head, like talking about how I'm like, that was the first thing she told me, is that I was a people pleaser, and it's like that's where that starts to become very tricky, and you don't even realize it, right? Like walking that fine line of being like, okay, I want to make space for you, but like, fuck you, like you're not doing the work, and I should not be the one that lays on my back so you can walk all over me every single time. And making those like really safe boundaries, but also like still trying to have like a relationship with those people. And we talk about parents all the time, our parents all the time, and like it's different. We are different than our parents were. The world is different than when our parents were our age. There's a lot of like variables that come into play that you have to like constantly be juggling.
Yeah, and I mean, like there's two steps in there that you say is about recognize that other people aren't as self-aware or aren't doing the work, and then the next step is accepting that and being able to not latch on to that and be mad about it and be like, you should be changing it this way. I've probably through Facebook probably chased a lot of people completely out of my life just because I had an opinion and I felt strongly about it, and I put it out there in a way that probably wasn't the most easily received. And it is what it is. It's not like, it's Facebook. It's not like these people were paying my bills or comforting me on lonely nights or whatever. But just as a general, want to be part of the human race and all that big stuff, wanting to interact with people positively. It's a learning process, and you got to have forgiveness for people, and you can't take the pretentious stance that, okay, so now that I'm self-aware, I'm here and you're there. And it's tough to do that because there's a tendency to want to feel like, how do you not know this? And like, I'm also telling you this, trust me, but it doesn't work that way. And we all learn it.
The fun of the psychology. So I was a psychology minor, and then I did like all of my education masters. So all of that's literally like psychology of learning, psychology of development, all that fun stuff. It becomes a really fun game to, once you see people for the way that they react, to go in and uncover why they are the way they are. Right?
It's funny because I'm not at psychology anything when I went to college, but I minor in poli-sci, and it's a similar but different stance because of the your political stance is also based on your psychology in a way. So
because your beliefs is your identity, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's very funny that you're going this route right now, but keep going.
And also, sorry to cut you off, but psychology to a certain level is basically just common sense. So if you have, it's basically just common sense.
And that's what makes it kind of fun, right? Is that the emotional responses, right? The way that people react are usually like, they're puzzle pieces of like seeing why, like, people who choose to react based off of like a depth of like insecurity, there's usually a couple different ways that they respond to things, right? Or the way they make other people feel, right? People who have like trust issues, there are certain common like trends that you'll start to see, like and then you kind of will watch other people and you're like, all right, well, I see this becoming relevant. Like, what happened back like in your life? What was your experience that created this kind of result? I have lots of fun doing that, and it's not fun to do to myself, which is what I've been doing.
But that's where the work starts.
Couple years, because you're like, oh shit. But it's kind of fun to do, and I think that has helped me with what you're talking about, Adam, too, right? You start to, when you can understand where people are coming from, you are able to give them that space, right? And then you can be like that encouraging person that's like, okay, well, this is your scary space. Like, I'm going to try to encourage you to step into it and like be supportive as you step into it, because when you've gone through it yourself, it's not fun and it's scary to do on your own. But then like, well, you get to choose if you're going to walk into it or not. But at the end of the day, I have to make the decision of how I interact with you, how I engage with you, based on whether or not you're going to do that work. And it's not I think you're bringing up a really good point. It's not about being the pretentious person and being like, well, I'm self-aware and you're not. And like, I can't be friends with you because you're not good enough for me because you don't do this. But it's a matter of saying, and it's with family too, right? It's a matter of saying, well, if you're not going to deal with your crap, I got a bunch of crap I'm carrying. Like, I can't take your crap on too. Like, there has to be, it's like a very specific way that you address that relationship then. And it's not fun, but it's totally worth it, because otherwise you get like your heart is pulled out of your chest constantly.
Yeah, it's just, it's never ending, because there's always something with any given person. There's always something else that you want to feel that you can connect deeper, and then there's always another person where a lot of things are there. And so you've got to learn to just be content with everybody being on their journey. And like, in the as the Trump era, when politics was everything. Before that, people cared, but it wasn't like that. But I had a similar type of experience with these kinds of I don't want to say confrontations, but just conversations, because of like I said, the atheist thing. And when I first when I first, because I was very religious growing up, and then I lost my faith in college, and then I felt really like on top of the world, that I knew everything and that nobody could know anything. And it was just months before, when I was believing in something that I no longer believe in, and I just realized that trying to do the opposite of Bible bashing is pointless. But I thought I was in the right at the time, and it just takes the attempt and the failure to realize, okay, this doesn't work. And even if you are like you prove your point right, even if you win, the argument from a logical standpoint. Like, all right, then what? That, truth matters, logic matters. That's something very important to me. But human relationships and specifically my human relationships with other people are more important.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dive into more of it's so funny because we had I can already tell very similar. Maria's smiling because she knows my religious experiences. It's very interesting when you get to the point of that acknowledgement. Oh my god, that's so cute.
For anyone that's not watching, there's a dog that appeared.
A dog screen up. Sorry, I have
He's
no idea what I was
clacking
saying.
and licking stuff, so hopefully he'll sit there. Sorry.
I don't know what I was saying.
We'll get to Morty after Brittany's.
It's very easy for me to get distracted by Adam.
No, well, you were saying, and I'd like you to continue because there's a million different ways that we could take this, but it's your show. So I mean, you're saying about the atheism that you want to explore that and explore, like whatever it is. I'm an open book. I have
your experiences with it. So like and this is where we're gonna see where these dots connect. Like I took that path also where I also initially felt very being like a Jewish Catholic, felt very rejected being Catholic, and then was very rejected by Jewish communities too, so that was fun. But I very much took the same stance where I was like, well, these are all the reasons why this is wrong and why you're all full of shit. And it made me feel better because then I didn't feel like there was no justification for them rejecting me because it was all bullcrap, right? It made me feel a little better. And then I got super on my high horse about it and was very proud to be like, I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. And then I got to a point where, honestly, for me, it's awesome that atheism aligned with you because that's where my fiance is too. So I can see where the perspectives are. For me, it was learning about other very spiritual religions like Hinduism and Buddhism that made me realize oh, I'm not, they're not wrong. I get where they're coming from, but that's just not what I believe in, and that's okay. And then starting to kind of circle back and realize oh, I can be okay with this even if it's not who I am, and I don't have to believe in it, and you can make space for everybody within that.
Right, and I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think part of the one of the biggest things that at first I didn't want to claim the atheist title, and then the biggest things that I pushed for after that is that what you said, those are again two different steps. Not believing in one thing is not the same as taking other philosophies and other feelings, and as cliche I would say, oh, I don't believe in God, but I'm spiritual. Even until recently, my dad believed that because I was an atheist, I had the position that I claimed that I believe there's no God. And that's simply not what atheism means. Without theism, a belief in a God or gods. I simply have not been, atheism is just a position that you have not been convinced that a God exists. And so that is completely mutually exclusive from Buddhism and meditation and spiritual experiences and believing in something bigger than yourself. It's just about that one specific claim. And I think a big problem with the areas of global society where religion really, I mean, in America, for the most part, people kind of believe what they want to believe, and nobody's killing each other over it. But in parts of the world, they are. But for the most part, I think the reason why the term atheism is so stigmatized is because even though most people don't subscribe to an organized religion and believe in an old bearded man in the sky, they still use religious language, and they still have feelings that they don't know how to categorize in a way that's other than a religious experience. And I just simply think that if you understand neurology, if you understand how the brain works, if you understand the different chemicals of the brain, that you understand that these experiences can be brought on by things that are completely natural. These feelings can be brought on by drugs. It's not something that needs anything that lies outside of the laws of physics in order to happen. So when people, I've stopped doing it as much lately because I just want to more normalize the term rather than have the conversation. But yeah, atheism is not saying, oh, I know that there's no God. It's just saying, I haven't been convinced that there's a supernatural being that can, reach into our universe and change the laws of physics.
Right.
On top of that, there's a lot of spiritual stuff that I subscribe to. And I would say most atheists are the same way. I would say there are very few, though there are very few people who are like, no, I know God doesn't exist. I know when you die, you just rot in the ground. And I think that's just as ridiculous as believing in a man in the sky. And I don't, it's just about that middle ground.
Yeah, and finding what fits in for you. That was my personal journey with it before. Is like, there are philosophies I agree with, and there are things that I agree with in like the foundations of some of the religions, right? But then, there's not one that I say, "Oh, this is it for me." Like this I match everything. This matches with I can connect all of the dots here. And
because it doesn't make sense.
Right. At the end of the day, and if you think about it, right, outside, and I love that you're bringing up the science of it, because science is always my defense for everything. At the end of the day, right, the science of all of it, it always makes me laugh when there's that competition between the science, the physics, the all of that, and religion, and it's like, well, if they can't exist together, you can't have one without the other, right? Like it's not they can't be like there can't be that separation there. They have to be harmonious with one another, otherwise it's not going to make any sense, and then it's going to play into the fact where people can continue to say like, oh, I don't believe in God. And that was my issue too. It's funny, I struggled for the longest time, and my mother's issue with me all the time was like, she's like, oh, well, you don't believe in God. Like she would tell other people that I don't believe in God. Like that when we
I
were
think that's just so wrong though. That's just so
when we
wrong.
were
Your
having
mother
our
do that.
issues, she used to say like that I didn't believe in God. And
It's
sometimes
gaslighting.
Yeah,
she would
100%.
sometimes like bring it up and be like, well, so you're not, it would be like, first the conversation would be like, always, are you coming to church? That was the start of it, right? And then it was like, well, and then I'd be like, well, no, I don't believe in having to go to church. And then it would be like, oh, well, why? And then I would be like, well, because I don't think that I should have to go to a specific place at a specific time to be a practicing Catholic. Like I don't think that should be like a rule for being a religious person. And then it would be like, oh, well, you don't think you have to go to church because that's God's home. You don't believe in God. Like that was where, so like I understood
Catholicism.
right? Catholicism, that's what it was telling her. That's like,
and I'll just tell Adam, I am a practicing Catholic, but I also don't go to church because I don't believe that. Again, to your point, Brittany, I don't need that hour of preaching, quote unquote, from a pastor that sometimes I don't even like being lectured from. Like I don't need that to be close to God, whatever else that I believe in. So agree.
Yeah.
Agreed. So that's where it would start, and I understood how she got there, right? How she got to that conclusion. But she would start telling people that, and I'd be like, it's not that I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the God.
Yeah.
Right. I don't believe in, and that's why I had to start changing. It wasn't like, thank God for my yoga practices and all of the philosophies that I learned through that, because now I don't use like the term God anymore in that sense of like that bearded guy. Like you were saying too, like I have a belief in something greater than myself, and I think that the universe has all of the science at play that I will never understand to a certain extent, right? And I can believe in that, and whatever that branches out in, all the forms that it branches out in. But I don't think as humans, right, if you think about all of the neuroscience and the limited capacity we have, after a while that intelligence, like there's a disconnect in between what we're what we're capable of and what that greater power is. It's funny. Do you read Napoleon Hill at all, Adam?
I do not.
So he's a philosopher, but he talks a lot about like society, and like he studied like all of the wealthiest people in society over like the book that I'm reading right now. I don't remember. It's from the over like 100 years ago, earlier than that. He talks a lot about how one of those greatest ways that people can like tap into their ability to be successful is by acknowledging that separation and then finding moments where they can tap into like trying to have that communication in some sense, like whether it's through meditation, it's through like written word, or like finding those powers that we have the ability to connect into to tap us into that greater intelligence. But I think that's what we need, right? Like we don't need more organized religions that tell people how you're supposed to live your life.
How you're supposed to live.
You as a good or a bad person.
I agree. And Maria, I'd love to hear
that like worldliness.
Yeah.
And Maria, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but really quick, I just Brittany, the your mom coming to you and having the conversation, why? It's not it doesn't seem, I mean, I don't want to, I obviously wasn't there, but it doesn't seem like it's a, hey, why do you think this? Why do you believe what you believe? It's like, you
It's
should
a
be doing
harsh.
this. Right. And which is not, you know, which is completely, again, people, atheists do this to
Right.
believers in the same way, but we frown upon that. That's not a way that you should treat somebody's beliefs. You don't demand,
No.
you know, you don't have you know, nobody has a right to do that. You don't owe an explanation to anybody, but it just comes, you know, it comes down to, you know, the thing you said about not using the God in the religious language. To me, that is the crux of the issue. And that is something I really appreciate, because I think that I think that disconnect comes from the fact that a lot of atheists are talking about things that overlap with the religious experience and virtue and morality and all this stuff, but they're just saying, look, we don't need this extra God piece. We just we you know, if we agree that we're all human beings and we want to live the best life, there are objective ways to achieve that, and there are objective ways to go against that. And I just think the religious language, you know, the idea of being a you know, I know the idea of being a practicing Catholic and just not going to church is, it used to be, you know, I don't
What
know,
are you
heresy.
doing? Yeah, like
Exactly.
what do you?
And so my question to you would be,
Mhm.
and again, I don't mean this as a challenge, as I'm accusing Brittany's mother as being.
No, challenge everything.
It's
Challenge
okay.
everything always.
This is a safe space, Adam.
Hashtag
Don't worry
do
about it.
I would just wonder why you feel the need to put a name on your God and a name on your practices and your beliefs as Catholicism, when you don't actually believe what is in the Catholic Bible. You don't, you
Mhm.
pick and choose. And so you use a mechanism beyond that to determine which parts you follow and which parts you don't. And so I would,
Yeah. No, I feel like, and to your point, right? Like we see this all the time in politics too, right? Just the,
definitely.
you know, the LGBTQ community. That's like, I think it's Revelations. I will also caveat, I haven't read the whole Bible, and that's also not uncommon.
You should. You
Of
definitely
course,
should.
no, 100%. Yeah, it's obvious. It's just such a well, whatever. But
Horrible
anyway,
book. It's a
no, it's
terrible,
awful.
horrible.
No,
It's
it's
hard to
awful,
read.
and it's awful because it's hard to read. Number one, number two, it's such a outdated
right.
translation and just in general book to base religion on, but also, you know, whatever, that's also a different thing. And then three, I think I had a third one, but I can't remember now. But in essence, we see this all the time in politics because, you know, our government, even though we try and separate church from state, we'll just say the GOP party is very conservative and also very Christian in their ways,
Right.
which we talked about before, Brittany, that you shouldn't be basing your politics on a book that not everyone reads and subscribes to, especially in the land that where religion, there's freedom of religion, that you can pick and choose whatever religion you want to be. So why are you basing it off of the Bible when not everyone believes in the Bible, right? So to your point, yes, I don't subscribe to everything that's in the Bible, which is very common in the Christian faith because there are different translations and different interpretations. And same thing you can say about the Quran, you know, there are different interpretations of the Quran, and like, you know, that's different sects of the Muslim community. Fine, whatever.
The same thing with the Torah and the Jewish community too.
Correct. Yes,
well,
exactly.
And
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, there's an infinite number of religions, or there's this number, as many religions as there are people, because even though every Christian has their own version, and I just think that's fine. I just think that why do we have to call it all religion?
I don't know, but I will say that for me, I can only obviously speak to myself, right, and how I practice my religion. For me, because I am Filipino, and this is very much so, and I think this is also why I still practice the Catholic religion, is because it's so tied to my culture. I think because the fact that Filipinos, we are probably outside of the Vatican, we are probably one of the top 3 nations that is practice, like, that has Catholicism as like their religion, like their nation religion. So to me, I have more of a cultural tie than a religious tie, if that makes sense, to the religion.
Definitely.
Because that's, church is more like, all right, we're going to church, like this is a family thing. This is more of like and like, you know, I go to church in the Philippines all the time with like my dad's side of the family when we go, and it's just like a very like calming feeling and just like a community feeling, as opposed to being like, yes, I do believe in like God and heaven and hell and like whatever, but not to the traditional sense. Like I don't believe in the gates of hell anymore, like the whole fiery situation. It's more like a, not as an intense thing, but like more towards a purgatory situation where it's like, all right, atone for your sins because you're an idiot, but like this isn't shitty, as you know, like it's, so it's like,
Yeah.
it's an interpretation.
You have a nicer hell.
Right.
Yeah,
And like,
I mean, so
go ahead.
I definitely understand the cultural connection, and
Yeah.
you know, Jews and Muslims say the same thing, and I understand that. I am of the position that if we take those things, the aspects of community, morality, you know, just cultural values in general, and have them be part of the culture, and rather than part of a religion within a culture, then we don't need to exclude people who are not willing to accept a story that is
I agree completely.
But isn't that the point? Right? If you look back, and I always come back to like the point of religion, right? If you go back to it, the end of the day, these very established fine laws, especially within Christianity and Catholicism, were about getting people to do what you wanted them to do. First,
100%.
And then second of all was about you being able to create those boxes where you could start excluding people, right? And it's the same thing with everything. We were just having a conversation about this not too long ago, Maria. It's the same thing with everything else, right? It's what I believe in, because we talked about this with music, right? What I believe is good music. If I say this is good music, then I can say that that's bad music, and then I can exclude those people who don't believe what I believe in.
Right, because then you get a notion of like, all right, they function like this way, so I'm not going to exclude them in my little box.
It's the same thing that we do.
Of course. With religion.
We were talking about this with labels, right? High school labels, right? And like how we use the idea,
what do you mean?
Like clicks and stuff, and how you start to
like the jocks and the nerds.
You identify with a certain area, and like why those even came to be is we try our mind, right? The computer that is in our brain tries to make things as black and white as possible, because any of the areas that are gray and in between or complicated or can't be comprehended stress us out. So our brain is like, everything has to be nicely organized. So when it comes down to religion, it's like, oh, okay, we're going to believe in these certain things. And then it's like, I can very gently like pick and choose, like, oh, I like this box and I'm going to fit in this box.
And like,
and this is my identity. And then anything that doesn't fit outside of this that makes me uncomfortable, I get to choose to push it away, because I can say, well, I believe in this. And you believe,
and those are like the more like,
I can put the space there.
And those are more like the older, I don't know, I mean, the older generations, I guess, and obviously this generation too, right? Because like they're more, it's just the traditional way of looking at religion is what is hindering everyone from being like one religion, if you will, like one big community. Because like the older I get, the more self-aware I get, and just like in general, just like more intelligent about like life and the universe and just like the afterlife and in general, that like what it boils down to is that everyone has the same beliefs. It's just whatever God or universe that you want to believe in is the same, right? Yes,
like, be a human fucking person.
Yeah,
correct. The whole golden rule of everyone in general is just to be a good person. It's just the way that's been translated in each and every book or in each and every scripture is just whatever they want to believe in. And like, yes, if everyone was just self-aware, this goes back to the previous conversation we just had, everyone was just self-aware, like we all, like to some extent, we would all just see, we'd all just see that we're all just literally doing the same thing. And like, you don't have to put a religion or like a God,
any other potential space in there.
Yeah, and that's what secular humanism aims to do. And there's, you know, there's qualms within that community about, you know, speciesist and what about animals and everything. But in general, secular humanism is about saying there are definitely good aspects to religion. That's why it's been in every culture. And it's persisted for so long. There's no doubt that, you know, all the things we talked about, the community, the charity, and all that are good. But there, you know, again, I seriously encourage you to read that Bible. That there's some horrible stuff in there.
It's shitty, absolutely.
And it's just I think it really comes down to the language that, you know, that ties us back to that. And, you know, people talk about how the religious charities and all this and that, and it's just the religion has a stronghold on those values. And so it's not that there aren't secular organizations doing stuff, but they're just their own thing. And if we were just as humanity having those religious beliefs as part of our human values, then we wouldn't need a God to tell us this or that. We wouldn't need a heaven to pine for. We would, be able to fully focus on the life that we know that we have not now. We wouldn't have to fear hell. And it's just, I just think that religion is being a good person with extra steps.
Agreed.
Right.
And I think just again
and a lot more pushback if you don't meet those extras.
That was gonna say I was gonna go to that route. Brittany, we talked about this before. Like growing up Catholic for the both of us has put the fear of God in us, and that's obviously a thing that we had to both unpack in our own separate ways, right?
And my parents needed me to have that as a
I was Catholic until I was 13, and then we moved over to a Methodist church where I stayed until I went to college. And I remember freshman year in college, I was still putting Bible verses in my aim away message. So it wasn't, it was somewhere around then, like 19, 20 years old, where I was taking some philosophy courses and really starting to think about, does this make sense? Do I really believe in this?
Yeah, right. And that's a big question, right? Is when you're constantly
being like shown the same thing over and over again,
like you said, Maria, if it's a place where you feel, if it's a place where you feel like you have a sense of community, right?
Yeah.
What length of courage and vulnerability and being absolutely terrified does it take to turn around and be like, well, what if I don't really believe in this? Then what about all of that community there?
Especially when you're so young in the religion. Like I went to Catholic school from preschool before I moved to, Central Jersey, from preschool to 4th grade. And
you're still Catholic. Grade. Wow. That's uncommon.
I'm still Catholic. I know. Again, it's very tied to my culture. It's very, and I feel like that.
I'm just kidding.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. And like, it's so, no, I mean, Catholic school was harsh. I will say, like Catholic school from preschool literally to 3rd grade, the harshest. And like, not even education wise, just like being in church because the church was right there and we had to go to mass every first Friday of like I still remember Catholic school because
it's
it's so
right? You have to build building up your habits of being a good Catholic.
Right, and that's the fear of God.
Means to be a Catholic.
Literally, like science class was not science. Obviously, it was literally God made the universe, and like So I mean,
sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the problem is that I think that everything in our culture, since this whole political takeover, everything has become a religion. And so in the same way that discourse about religion has always been taboo and politics was taboo as well, but then it all came out, which should have also come out with, oh, okay, we all have different opinions and we whatever. But everybody's opinions came out, but the standards didn't change. So you have to follow this, otherwise you're canceled, otherwise you're this.
Yep.
And I think definitely like 2015 to now, it was a specific era in terms of politics. And I mean, before that, I wasn't too deep into politics. I was really only into it as much as the religion aspect of it. I went to a Reason rally in 2016, but that was just about like sex education in schools and stuff. But that was more because of the religious aspect than the political. I remember when my freshman year in college, when Obama won, I was just walking back to my dorm room on a normal night, and I saw all these people cheering. I was like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
And then, when this whole Trump thing started, I got swept up in it, but I think I got caught up in the mainstream narrative. I was a Bernie bro for the whole thing, and I let the media tell me that Trump was going to be the worst thing in the downfall of America. And, I definitely don't like Trump. I don't like the Republican Party, but I think the direction of people who associate with the people, specifically of like the politicians of the left wing, are starting to push themselves further and further. And I think that causes both the politicians and the voters on the other side, or just who are left in the middle, which I would say myself, but I was always like rather left libertarian, but some of the ideas have gone so far left that people are calling me conservative and alt right. you know,
Right.
because of a certain things that I don't necessarily believe or adhere to. And if I was able to have those discussions, I could explain why I don't believe X, Y, and Z, and why I believe this is something, and this should be a policy versus a moral position, and all of these kinds of things. But all of that discussion is shut down, and it's you know, I'm just learning you know, I was always on a mission to civilize, to quote the newsroom.
Yeah.
To get people to understand things better. Like, yo, the media is lying to you. I know it's a trope that, but it's like for real, you know. And I don't know if you saw the Project Veritas thing where they just got a woman to go on a Tinder date with one of the CNN producers, and he was bragging about, oh yeah, the death toll numbers are gangbusters. We did so well, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but you know, just confirming straight from the horse's mouth that it's like, it's the people who have been saying, oh, the mainstream media. I mean, it's not just that we've been, you know, it's not the same thing as you know, people who are like in QAnon, or people who are on the other side, who have the Trump derangement syndrome. There are issues that are real, but everyone has made everything into an issue, so it all just gets lost in the fray. Yeah. And I don't know what to do about that. So
I mean, honestly, that's like the standing too close to the flame situation. Like, our societies is it's one of the same. Like, the flame and our society are together right now. Like, there's it's become, it honestly feels like it's not a place where you want to give up hope, but you're trying the best that you can not to feed the fire, and then at the end of it, be somebody who's still standing when the ashes are there to like rebuild it. Like that, I feel like that's the very frustrating position that like people who do kind of like all the things that you're bringing awareness to right now, Adam, like when you start to see all of these things, it's when everybody else is so sensitive and is so like, and it's not, I think the sensitivity is good. I just think that we're trying to make up for like the last 40, 50, 100 years of our society not having sensitivity to things, not being aware of them. We're trying to do it all at once, and it just makes the cancel culture thing is like a, I really can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, it's tough because we don't give people a chance to catch up. You know, things are changing so quickly, and it's just like, if you have the information from last week, and now, you know, it used to be that Asians had more privilege than white people, and then now it's stop Asian hate, and you know, super left wing pundits are getting canceled for things they said that were at the time, you know, what was the narrative. And now it's, and so it shows you, and I'm not as tapped into what, you know, the cultural the cultural aspects in terms of, you know, the modern recent things are of the Republican Party, because I don't really think I don't really think there's much there. I think there's your you know, your strong progressives, and then there's people who are somewhere not as far down that road. Either they completely oppose it, and you know, they're definitely conservatives and Republicans, or they're just like not with this whole new wokeness and whatever. But I would consider myself someone who, like I said, I was ready to vote for Bernie. I voted for Hillary, and I you know, this time I decided, because I voted for somebody who is a horrible person, that unless you earn my vote, I'm not voting again. But I was somebody you would consider a Democrat, a lefty, and now I cringe at the association with the left and the Democratic Party itself, both in terms of the politicians and the more extreme voters, which I don't think is most people, but they're the ones that are loudest, and especially on Twitter, and that's why that's why the politicians are.
It's a matter of who's getting heard, right? And it's the same thing with, like, that's why we end up in these screaming matches. It's the same thing with religion. It's the same thing with any of those areas of that hold a lot of power and influence that people can attach their identity to, right? It's whatever voice is the loudest, which is why you hear about all of the, like, you know,
radical left, radical right, whatever.
And it's like the people who are very radical religion in their religions, right? All the bad stuff that comes out about, you know, who's getting pushed away, who's getting bullied, who's getting this and that. We really just only like to listen to one another when we're yelling, like
or when we're agreeing with each other. It's echo chambers.
Back to what you're saying too, right? Even when we're agreeing with each other, communication is so important. Here's like a perfect example of this. Happens in my household all the time. Dan and I are very different in the way that we communicate, and the way that we perceive information. So there are days when we get in fights, having had been agreement about the original topic of conversation, but because the way that I talk about it and my perspective of it versus the way he talks about it and his perspective of it are on like same road, different directions.
Yeah,
we end up fighting.
It happens all the time.
I'm saying that this is my common saying in our house. I'm saying the same thing you just said. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Like we have to go back to all of that. And when that's not already happening, that's where that shift can happen, and it can become a bigger disagreement already, even if you're on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's it's only just getting more and more polarized.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
It's harder. It's definitely harder because we don't have enough of the space that's right, especially when you're talking about the media and the places that are overseeing a lot of the spaces where these things are happening, especially in a public sector. Where are all of the safe spaces for that to happen anymore?
Like very little.
Or there's someone there to mediate it. There's someone able to keep that very safe, neutral place. It's even on our debate stages where it's supposed to be like that, it's not fucking like that. Like there's still the media is still overseeing that and is pulling on whatever strings and getting whatever angle they want. We don't have enough of those neutral spaces for these safer conversations to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely, safe space is a loaded word.
Sure.
But I understand you mean a place to let these ideas fly freely and let the best ideas come out on top, and that's the way it should be. That's the point of freedom of speech, and that's always how we've gotten better ideas. We had some terrible things in our past, and the only way we got past them was talking about them. And now people want to shut down conversation because they're so sure they're right about things. And it's like, okay, if you're right, then prove it. I'm on board. I'm willing to have this conversation. But when you and this is what I mean when it's mirroring the stuff with religion. It's like a lot of religious, there's a lot of religious people who understand, okay, the Bible and the main narrative, it doesn't really work, but I still believe in this general sentiment. And then there's people who believe, every little thing. And then when you say, okay, do you believe that God is all powerful? And do you believe that God could make a rock that he couldn't lift? And, the answer to that is, okay, well, an omnipresent God can do all things that are possible. That's a good philosophical answer. But the point is you don't get there. You just get defensive shutdown, deflection. And it's like, the whole idea of being challenged is now being treated as actual violence, and not proportionately. And this is why I mean, if of the people who haven't blocked me on Facebook yet, I'm sure if you ask them, a lot of them would say that I've become more right or more conservative. And I think the truth of it is that my values haven't changed. Society has changed a lot, and I happen to just agree with the more moderate of the conservative people because I don't see a lot of moderation in the other side. And when I say the other side, most people are in the middle who are more passive and are just trying to live day to day. Then you have people who are in it and paying attention and try to drive a conversation, and all the politicians. So I'm not necessarily talking about the people who don't spend, I spend hours a day just watching videos on this and that and reading this and reading that. And I understand that not everybody does that. I have a job where, I work, for shorter hours most of the time in the car. So I'm listening to podcasts and all that stuff. So I'm constantly consuming this information. And I understand that it's not reasonable to expect the average person to do this. But in that same vein, Brittany, what you were saying before about the frustration, it's like, well, I have put the time into this. So why aren't you guys giving me the respect to at least indulge that this may have some weight to it? I might be wrong, but at least give me the benefit of the doubt. Then I'm a smart guy. I paid attention to this. You may bring up a point. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. But it stops even before we get to that point. People get offended, and then I'm an asshole, and then it's it. So I don't. Yep. I try not to even bother.
This whole thing, right? Going back to what I said before, right? The trends in people's reactions to things say a lot about their emotional state and their psychology, right? And if you very simply look at the people who become highly defensive and highly irritable and closed off, a lot of the basis of that is showing signs of insecurity and self-deprivation and questioning of themselves. Like there's a lack of foundation there, right? So, and I've said this to Maria, and I see this, I work with a lot of children, so I see this across the board in just like the human race. Our level of our willingness to open our mouths is higher than it's ever been before. Our willingness to know who the hell we are and actually deal with like our insecurities and address what's going on with us personally is probably at a low. So all of us are walking around, and people, some of the most insecure people, like even like this is why rates, like we see bullying rates going to where they're going, right? And a lot more like, now I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday, right? Kids are not bullying the way they used to bully, where they would get in each other's faces and stay up. They're bullying behind closed doors and across computers, and like the same thing that we see
all day long
as adults, right? That are
100%.
happening online, like you just brought up with Facebook, right? No one's doing it in person because they don't have the balls to do it, because we don't have the security to stand in our shit and be like, this is my crap and I own it, and I'm gonna let somebody else point it out now, right? So the second that we start to, if our identity is so closely tied in to the beliefs we have, even about things like religion and politics, or like what friggin' shirt looks nice on you, whatever the fuck it is, if we're so tied to that because we're not tied to anything on a deeper level of who we really are and being comfortable with that, we're never going to be able to have the conversations, because we're always going to be on the defensive, because behind all of that, we don't know who we are and we don't like that person, or we don't like whatever we're putting out there. So that, I think, is the bigger issue that we have to address 100%. Is like, why do we, and this is like, this was the question that I used to ask myself. Why don't I like myself? Right? Like, why am I unhappy? Why don't I like this? Why do I get reactive? Why do I get mad? Like, those are the not fun, going back to that self-awareness, right? Those are the not fun questions that you have to ask. And for so many of us, not only do we not even have it on our radar to think that way, to realize that like, oh shit, it's us, but we're too scared to do it. And we don't have the skills to be able to do it well, where we're going to come out unscathed, right? Like, and we're, because being an anxiety depression person myself, like, if you're not like, you will have to be ready for battle, right? You're going into that like, and if you don't have the proper armor in terms of like the coping skills and the mechanisms to protect you, like, you're not making it through to the other side. So people are willing to get into battle with one another over the things that help them hold on to who they think they are, because they don't know how to address the depths of the insecurity, or realize that it even is existing underneath all of those layers.
Absolutely. And I think, to use your analogy and to take it a step further, you have to be armed and ready for battle, but you also have to trust that you've done preparation, that you've become the warrior, that your armor is good or whatever. And that being, the Instagram generation, have you built up a personality? Are you somebody that without Instagram filters and likes and stuff, that you have something? Do you have that? I mean, a lot of people don't.